Russia, Iran and Turkey have suspended work at their consulates in the Afghan city of Mazar-e-Sharif as the Taliban makes advances across the region. Over 1,000 Afghan soldiers have been forced to flee across the border into Tajikistan. England's COVID lockdown will end in 2 weeks' time, despite rising COVID cases. The Prime Minister has said face masks will be voluntary and social distancing scrapped. He says it's possible because 86% of adults have had at least one jab of the vaccine. Gunmen in Nigeria have kidnapped at least 140 children in the northwest of the country. At least 8 people, including 3 babies, were abducted from a hospital in the city of Zaria. And gay rights activists in Georgia have cancelled the last event of Pride Week in the face of violent attacks. The organisers say they could not risk people's lives.
We begin this hour in the Japanese city of Atami, where hundreds of rescuers are racing against time. On Saturday morning, mudslides devastated the resort city about 90 kilometers from Tokyo. 4 people are confirmed to have died, and more than 2 days after the disaster, dozens remain unaccounted for.
爆弾がこうなんていうんですか、爆発したみたいにわーっと、あとはズワーっとこう流れて土砂が流れた。
Officials in Shizuoka Prefecture say the slides washed away at least 130 houses and buildings. About 1,500 rescuers have been digging through the mud and debris. As of Monday, they've managed to rescue 24 people. But many families are still nervously waiting for news about their loved ones.
My neighbors saw my husband swept away. I am preparing for the worst. I think it will be so difficult to find him.
I escaped because I wasn't home when the mudslide hit my house, but my wife was there. I hope they find her as soon as possible.
Officials say 64 residents are still unaccounted for. NHK World's Shirakawa Marina spent Monday watching rescuers.
The evidence of mudslides' devastating power is all around us here. Behind me, you can see a massive amount of debris, including a tree and cars that were swept away. The police department is currently trying to remove the rubble. You can also see houses submerged in mud up to the 2nd floor. The train here is very, very steep. We have to climb dozens of stairs to reach this position. The sharp incline is what allowed the mudslides to gain so much force, and it's what made it so destructive.
Meanwhile, officials are watching the weather forecast and hoping it doesn't hamper their efforts. The survival rate in disasters drops significantly after 72 hours. Tennis star Osaka Naomi says she's now getting ready to play in the upcoming Tokyo Olympics, and her Japanese citizenship is a big motivation. In an email exchange with NHK, Osaka says she's preparing herself little by little so she can be at the top of her game for the Olympics. She says she's proud to be able to represent Japan. In May, Osaka withdrew from this year's French Open after rejecting media appearances during the tournament. In a Twitter post, she wrote that she'd suffered long bouts of depression. That triggered global concern about her mental health. In the recent email to NHK, she says she's had bouts of anxiety since she won the U.S. Open in 2018, earning global attention. Osaka says she's recently been spending a lot of time with her family, and she's feeling calm and refreshed, both physically and mentally. She started practicing again late last month. Next, to the coronavirus situation here in Tokyo as the capital gears up for the Olympics in 2 weeks. The recent case spike continues. It's forcing organizers to postpone announcing the winners of the ticket lottery for the opening and closing ceremonies. Health authorities reported 342 new infections in the capital on Monday. That marks the 16th straight day cases have gone up compared to the week before. Focused anti-COVID measures under a quasi-state of emergency remain in Tokyo and 9 other prefectures. They're scheduled to continue through next Sunday, along with a state of emergency in the southern prefecture of Okinawa. A growing number of government officials say the measures will have to be extended in the Tokyo area. The government is expected to make that decision as early as Thursday. If the measures are extended, it'll raise the need for another review of spectator limits at Olympic venues. Under the current plan, up to 10,000 fans will be allowed at events as long as venues don't exceed 50% of capacity. Organizers say they'll discuss the spectator issue once the government decides if it'll end the COVID measures on July 11th as scheduled. Turning to Indonesia, where a record 558 people died from the coronavirus on Monday. The country's healthcare system is being overwhelmed by new cases. The Red Cross says the country is on the brink of a catastrophe because of the Delta variant first detected in India. Health authorities confirmed nearly 30,000 new infections on Monday, another record high. The surge is linked to the spread of the highly infectious Delta variant. About 80% of hospital beds for COVID patients were occupied nationwide as of Saturday. In the capital, Jakarta, the rate topped 90%. 63 patients died from COVID at a hospital in Java last weekend. The hospital is asking the government to help address a critical shortage of medical oxygen. Government officials say demand for oxygen has increased five-fold nationwide. The officials are trying to secure oxygen supplies by ordering makers to prioritize products for medical use. Japan's Supreme Court has ruled that the second daughter of the late Omu Shindikyo cult leader Asahara Shoko, whose real name was Matsumoto Chizuo, can receive her father's cremated remains. Matsumoto's ashes have been kept at the Tokyo detention house where he was executed in 2018. The cult carried out the deadly sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway system in 1995. The Justice Ministry had considered giving the ashes to his fourth daughter, who's reportedly cut ties with the cult. She has expressed her readiness to have the ashes scattered at sea. But Japan's top court turned down an appeal by the fourth daughter for possession of the remains. The ownership of the ashes is being closely watched as public security officials are concerned they could become an object of worship for Matsumoto's followers. It remains to be seen what the second daughter will do with the ashes. Turning now to South Korea, a former prime minister has announced his intention to enter the country's presidential election in March of next year. Lee Na-kyung posted the announcement in a video on social media on Monday.
South Korea needs to play a leading role in institutionalizing peace on the Korean peninsula.
He pledged to do his best to address the coronavirus pandemic and ease the country's growing economic disparity. He previously served as the first prime minister in the administration of President Moon Jae-in. He's a former Tokyo correspondent for a South Korean media outlet and is well-versed in Japan affairs. In a recent poll by Gallup Korea, former Prosecutor General Yoon Suk-yeol received the most support at 25%, followed by Gyeonggi Province Governor Lee Jae-myung at 24%. Lee Na-kyung came in third with 6%. In Myanmar, the military has arrested dozens of reporters and canceled the licenses of media outlets, but some journalists are risking their lives to get the news out. The editor of the Democratic Voice of Burma told NHK why his channel is determined to continue its coverage.
When you start filming something on the street, even with your own mobile phone, it's already risk. So we have to find all different kind of ways to cover the story.
The military revoked the license of the Democratic Voice of Burma, or DVB, in March. It now broadcasts online. Ae Chang-nain says some of his colleagues have been arrested and jailed. The military released about 2,000 detainees last week, but his fellow reporters were not among them.
They took the risk, and they are committed to what they're doing and what they believe. People need to know the independent news, the real information. I think that's what we want to do.
As covering stories has become increasingly difficult, A. Chang-nain says DVB relies on citizen journalists throughout the country. He says they've become the channel's main source of information.
Everyone has a mobile phone, and they're reporting it. They're just normal, ordinary citizen, right? And it's harder for the military to pinpoint who is doing what.
A. Chang-nain is now outside Myanmar, but he says he'll continue to report on the country for the sake of democracy, despite the danger. Staying with Myanmar, sources say security forces entered a Japanese embassy official's home in Yangon without permission in mid-April. The sources say security officers also went into the home of an official with the Japan International Cooperation Agency on the same day and pointed their guns at the official's family. The sources say in both cases the officers left soon and no one was injured. The purpose of their action remains unclear. The embassy lodged a protest with the Myanmar side, saying the incidents violated the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. It's time now for world weather. As we've been reporting, people in Atami are dealing with the aftermath of the deadly mudslides. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori explains whether the rain will continue.
Hello there. In Atami, more rain and hot conditions could hamper the recovery and searching operations this week. Atami is a seaside tourist city known for hot springs. The area saw about 440 millimeters of rainfall from Wednesday to Monday. That's much more than the monthly rainfall for June. At the same time, Hakone had more than 870 millimeters of rainfall in several days. Now, we will continue to see rainy weather, but the peak is over. Heavy rain is not anticipated. However, we might see rain heavy at times that could lead to more flooding as well as landslides in central Japan. Meanwhile, western Japan will see heavier rainfall, but in fact, the Korean peninsula could see very heavy rainfall due to this frontal system and also a low pressure system on top. Lots of heavy rain will also spread to western Japan and parts of northern Japan as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, and there'll be another round of heavy rainfall affecting Japan on Thursday. Another big story is high temperatures. Tokyo could see the 30-degree mark on Tuesday. With high humidity, you could feel like 38 degrees or so. Shizuoka will remain on the hot side, and even Fukuoka could see 32 for the high on Tuesday. Be careful of heat stroke. Hot temperatures have caused big wildfire in Cyprus. Take a look at this footage. The blaze started on Saturday afternoon and spread quickly, fanned by strong winds. Dozens of homes were destroyed and 4 people were found dead. Authorities said the fire is the most destructive in decades in Cyprus. The government reported on Sunday that the fire was reduced thanks to the water drops by Greek and Israeli aircrafts. So we need rain and low temperatures, but unfortunately, temperatures will remain in the mid-30s every day and sunny conditions will continue for the rest of the week. That's it for me. Stay safe.